Hi, guys, and welcome to another edition of Talking Finance with myself, Dan. And today I've got a very special guest on. I've got Anny Lee Wilson from Joust. How are you?
Hi, how we going?
Yeah, good, good. Now, Anny, I keep on getting confused. Whereabouts are you based? Because I kind of thought that you were based in Adelaide, but you're not in Adelaide, are you?
No, Joust was born in Adelaide, but we are actually based in Sydney. But I've got teams all across Australia now. So my real people, my team that are on the ground, they're local representatives of Joust, and they fly the Joust flag and banner.
There you go. Okay. So let's I suppose let's start the conversation with the hard topic because thank you for being on for the first place, right? But I think for us we've had a bit of a miscommunication or a misunderstanding between Finance Coffee and Just, as well as me and you, obviously, right? But we'll slowly go through that. I just want to ask you about what Just has been up to in the last 2 years, misconceived in terms of what you guys do. So I've seen a few conversations about how what people think of you guys as a business, and then I've seen the comments that they just sell leads to three brokers, the same as in one lead to three different brokers. And at first I thought that didn't sound right, but can you I suppose explain to the audience where that miscommunication would have come through from?
So I've been obviously in the past 2 years, Joust has had a really big journey in redefining what digital customers look like. And I think the old model where it's not a misconception is the fact that we believe that through the journey of a customer online, and we always start with the customer first. Through the journey of the customer online, what happens with the customers generally, they do a lot of tab shopping, they do a lot of comparing of websites and all of that stuff. So the initial Joust offering was that we created I guess, a more affordable way of getting into the lead gen space without paying hundreds and thousands of dollars per lead, to the fact that we realized that the consumer was already looking at other options. So what we did was we basically said to the consumer, in a certain sense, through our many ways of doing wonderful things on technology, was we drove them to the Joust platform. To what they wanted to see was what were the three best providers in market that would fight for their business. In effect, whilst we had that as the consumer side where we thought that was the best journey for the consumer, we've also now found that it's not the best journey for the broker. Now, talking to the three match platform, it's basically providing the consumer choice of three partners on our platform to choose from. And that's through talking to them, to really having a relationship, and then letting our partners take that customer out of the market. Now, that was formulated with the fact that, as I said, providing the consumer choice. However, in reality, one of the things that we learned was that not all brokers were made the same when it came to making sure that their pitches were right, making sure that their customer experience of handling a digital customer was right to actually win that customer out of the market. To which it created a bit of contention. So in a sense, that competitiveness that we see in brokers, where we love to, like as brokers, we love to compete for business. At the same time, that three match model didn't really work for the broker side of town versus the consumer. Because at the end of the day, we started off with the consumer choice first, rather than focusing on, I suppose, quality on making sure that our brokers had quality in order to compete for that customer. So going back to my first analogy and setting of scenes, is that we know that consumers shop online. They'll have 20 tabs open. They'll have multiple lenders open. To which we thought, you know what, if we drove that consumer into one platform where we came out with the top, three suppliers that could actually service them, that would be a great consumer journey for them. However, it didn't really translate to the best broker journey as such. So I suppose not all brokers are made equal, and conversion rates were not to be expected with some brokers. Some brokers really love the journey of the three match platform, but some brokers didn't. And I think what we wanted to do in the last 2 years is we collected a lot of that feedback in market. We looked at ways of how do we make this a bit more of a pain point that we're taking out of the market, not only from a Joust perspective, but also from an industry perspective. So we've learned from the old model. We've learned that not all brokers are made equal when it comes to customer acquisition and conversations. And the three match side was providing an affordable entry point for brokers to come on board and try digital leads and digital customers. However, that translated to the fact that it created an unfair playing ground for those that were a little bit more inexperienced in that case. And to which it led to, I suppose, market feedback back to us that, that was probably not the best model in play for that.
I think the other thing to bear in mind as well is because that was not your only model, is it to be fair to say, because number one, yes, absolutely, from the customer's point of view, they're going to jump on multiple websites to look at and click on multiple, hey, contact me, right? But from the broker's point of view, in terms of going to Joust, you weren't offering just the freeway model at all. That was the absolute cheapest of your models being offered. Is that correct?
That's right. So we had two platforms, and we still try to play within those two platforms. So basically, we looked at the way that data was actually translated, right? So the first platform is the live auction platform, and now has been revamped, but that model was based on a referral partnership program. So what that meant was that the consumers that came through that platform basically entered in 20 data points. They stayed close to Joust. We had a team that looked after that customer, and it allowed brokers to compete in that space, but also at the same time have assistance from our Joust team to actually help get that customer to the point of application and conversion. So in effect, that was probably the bee's knees of it. But I guess it's just sometimes when we have a market where we go, this is where we want the ideal broker to go when it comes to customer acquisition, it didn't really translate to, I guess, broker barrier affordability. So what that meant was then when we always went in and said, this is actually the best way to capture a customer because they're highly intent. They're giving us 20 data points, including a credit score band. And in effect, we help you through that customer journey. So therefore, we are a referral partner to you as a business. But we have brokers that go, well, I can do better than Joust. I can do better than anyone in the marketplace. So I'll take my chances in the three matches side because it's cheaper to enter. Which meant that we didn't have, I guess, not control, but influence on that customer journey, but also that broker experience. Because in effect, it put that back into the broker's hands of their experience and what their perception of their skill level was, versus what we're saying in the other model is that we will help that journey through.
Yeah, and I think for the listeners out there, I've said this multiple times, right? Especially in the terms of lead gen. When a lead comes through, especially an internet lead, if you don't contact them in the next 5 minutes, it's dead. Well, it's if you yourself jump onto the computer yourself, how many lead or comparison sites can you go yourself, right? So why would you expect a client to put in a lead and then just wait for 2 hours for you to call them? It's not going to happen. So
you're right, Dean, and that's the thing, right? So as much as we're a two-sided marketplace, and our one of our strong focus is now to make sure that our broker industry partners are happy, but at the end of the day, it's all about the consumer. If the consumer journey and their expectations not met, regardless of, I suppose, how much you pay for a lead or whatever it may be, it's not about you at the beginning. It's really about that consumer journey. And that's probably where I find that it's about, I need to, from a broker perspective, is I need to drive growth. I need to settle loans. I need to make money, versus, hey, the consumer here is actually trying to tell you that they're going through a process and a journey. And you've got to be able to react to when they want something, not when you want something.
Okay, so moving on to our next question for you. And I suppose there's going to be a little bit of repetition there as well, right? So what kind of pain points do you see, other than what we just discussed about, for the broker and consumer relations to lead gen at the moment?
So I see a few things. I think the first part of it is, I think what we've also been doing in the last 2 years is that we've actually been championing education for brokers around digital customers and understanding the market when it comes to that. I think the thing here is that leads generation is a really big space where I suppose, as much as it's about driving consumer volume to giving you a customer you can ring, it doesn't really translate to the fact that most people go into this quite blindly and thinking that it's a paycheck lead that comes through and I'm going to be able to draw down and settle and make money immediately. So we've taken on the corporate responsibility in the last 2 years to really invest in education for brokers to understand the digital customer, how they're acquired, how they come through, and how they're actually being sold to you by many channels, and what does that mean for conversion. And I guess the pain points that I see is the conversion piece is it varies, because, not, as I said, I might not be a great salesperson like compared to the next person. However, we get lead generation gets measured based on success now, not success in the future, and also the fact that, as I said, some brokers have signed on with leads generation, not understanding how customers are actually wanting to interact or wanting to communicate. And at the same time, you need to understand that in order to react. And you've hit a few points here. In a sense, yes, a digital customer is a real customer, and in reality, it's about intent and intent in the moment. So you know how I talk about the about brokers wanting now versus the consumer wanting what they want. It's based on the fact that I want to talk to someone now, right? And the thing here is that we've then have the broker space where they're saying, when Annie comes through as a lead, no, I'll call Annie when I feel like calling Annie. So what that means is that for every moment that passes, my intent's going to wane as a consumer. So therefore, by the time, if you call me 2 days after I put in an inquiry, of course I'm going to either find other solutions already because I've had that time space. Of course, I'm probably not going to want to talk to you. Or three, I've even forgotten about you, right? So again, we need to put the consumer at the front of what we do, and it's about the consumer need and the when. We talk about the fact that we will help you when you need it the most, rather than wait for a branch to open, rather than wait for someone to call you from a bank lender and things like that. And that has resonated with consumer over the last, I think, growing market in the last 20 years. Because in reality, the want now consumers, particularly digital consumers, they want to be able to have access to information and people when they want it and need it. And that's where I think that the broker market has been successful, because we talk to the consumers and say, look, we can work on the weekends in the best time to have a conversation with you. We've got access to many lenders and all that wonderful stuff that brokers do. Is also the fact that the customer is saying, that's because you can offer it to me when I need it, not because I have to wait for a branch to open.
100%, that's correct. Yeah, I think there's another, I suppose you can call it customer type out there as well, that brokers need to understand, so that not every lead that's going to come in is going to equal to business, because maybe that client is actually nowhere near that stage where they are ready to buy or where they're ready to refinance straight away, but they're still at that very beginning of their journey to find out what do they need to get a home loan in general, right? So there does need to be a lot of education about that. There does need to be, I suppose you call it a preparedness that this may happen. But you don't, and businesses like yourself won't know that, because it's just you're here to connect the two, really, isn't it?
Believe it or not, we are not brokers in the sense of we don't write our own deals, because in effect our sweet spot in the business is a complementary service in the broker industry. And look, I've been a lender, I've been a broker, I've played in the aggregation space. And I think when it comes to how that ecosystem is so overpopulated with so many other things. The lead gen space is still that space where it does still add value to the industry, but it needs to be, one, you need to be educated. Two, you need to find a provider that really thinks about the pain points that you as a broker goes through, and how that gets resolved. So one of the other pain points that we talked to, the three match platform that we previously had around providing brokers with opportunities to talk to, and they've got to compete for it. We found that was actually a big pain point, regardless of whether the platform was a three match or if it was exclusive. You bought 100 leads or whatever it may be, thinking that you're going to make a lot of money. In reality, the pain point is contactability. And it goes back to your point where you said, it's about contacting the customer immediately and taking them out of the market. So what we found was that actually really didn't do justice for our brand. And what we found is that, I suppose that's moving on to where we're heading, is the fact that we want to solve that industry problem. And we want to take that pain point away from brokers, because contactability and conversion and all of that stuff really wanes on the lead gen space, but gives it a really bad name, because we've taken control out of that and given it back to the market, where I think that we have a very big variable bucket of great conversion through brokers and not so great conversion through brokers.
So, talking about your team as well, because your team has now grown exponentially as fast as what I can see from outside, right? So can you tell the audience at the moment, in the last few years, how your team has grown, basically, or how many reps have you got in each state?
Yes, so as I said, I've got a team in almost every state apart from SA and NT, but the other states will cover those areas. We have grown significantly, but we've grown it not based on, it's really strange to say that a fintech company has actually grown its people, because technology is supposed to take the place of people, right? And we're Australian based. So the thing here is that everything that we do is targeted around the Australian industry and the Australian market. So yes, we've grown, but we've grown in the sense of putting the right people in place.
Yeah, I think I'm going to add to that as well, because we do see it quite often in Finance and Coffee, that brokers, again, it's about, as frustrating, it's about trying to buy leads of the cheapest leads, right? And they buy it off businesses which don't have an Australian presence. They don't have Australian reps or BDMs in each state. And then, they don't find success. And then it's a perpetual cycle where they believe that they pay money, they don't find success, so then they just bag the lead gen industry itself. But realistically, the lead gen industry is growing at a rate of knots, and that's where your customers will be, like it or not, right? Because the kids these days, I mean, you and I think our children are around about the same age, they grew up with an iPad on their hands. They know more about it than we do, so that's where they're going to shop.
Yeah, look, the other thing I'd probably add here is that, look, we've got some responsibility to take too, right? So a tradie who's not successful and not good at their job, they will blame the tools, right? And in effect, we've set ourselves up to be a tool. And we've got to make sure that tool's better so that they can't blame the tool.
Okay. So on that, making the tools better, because I am also mindful of the time as well as yours. What are you doing that's new at Joust, so that, number one, obviously the brokers can benefit from it, which in turn means that the customer or the consumer can benefit from it?
Yeah, so we've just launched a new platform, which is our Joust Marketplace. It takes place over our old live auction platform. Now, it's been accelerated to many different levels of consumer intent, but we've also built it around very much as the consumer side. We've built it very much to focus on the supply side, which is the broker side. So the first part is that, how I talk about the fact that it's about consumer intent and taking them out of the market quicker. And then it talks about the fact that we know that brokers will have had bad experiences in the past about low conversion and not being able to contact a customer, for example. So, from this point forward, what we're saying is Gone are the days where you buy 100 leads, and if you convert that 100 leads, you might say it's a not so great experience, or you might say that it was a bad experience. So the new model that we've actually put in place is very, one, customer centric, because it's capturing consumer intent when they want to talk to somebody and seeing offers in market. The second part of that is that once the consumer hits connect me on our platform, we have a Joust Connect team that will have that conversation and ring that customer and see and get contactability for that customer to make sure that that's a real customer and the information, what they've entered, has been confirmed with the customer. And then from that point forward, we say to the broker, if your phone rings and it's from Joust, pick up the phone because there's a customer on the other end of that. So that solves two things. The first thing, it solves the fact that I'm a consumer and I'm not waiting for someone to call me and then I'm going to lose interest. The second part of it is that we've answered the contactability issue, which is a really big issue in leads gen for our broker space, is that there's a customer on the other line when the phone rings. But it's still about the customer, because you need to get the customer, the phone call, because there's a real customer with a real need there. So that's the model that we've created to answer most of the pain point in the marketplace. The other part also is that we're not charging for customers' profiles that you can't contact, because we're doing the contacting for you. So therefore, when your phone rings, that's the only time that you will get charged. And at the same time, what that means is that behind the scenes, the Joust Connect team also helps with that customer journey. And it takes that customer journey through the process of keeping that customer intent with the broker. So therefore, it increases, the conversion for our broker to settlement to application a lot, on a steadier form. But at the same time, it's all about the customer, but it's also all about the broker.
Absolutely. And I suppose in layman's terms, that's what you call warm lead, isn't it? Because whereas previously it was, hey, you're gonna pay X amount of money, and here's a list of people to call. Not with you guys, but I'm saying in general with businesses out there, say especially from from India or so forth, who do these lead gens, and they try to say to sell it very cheaply, when it may not be a real person at the end. What you're doing is I suppose making sure it is definitely a real person at the other end of the line. So again, just be mindful of the time. Is there any last words you'd like to give to the audience, Annie, or if we
No,
sort of no?
No, not really. I think the key message here is that we've learned in the last 2 years, and we've critiqued and built a new business now that is very broker centric, but also tailors around the customer need as well. We're data rich, and at the same time, data rich means that you can utilize that information to build better rapport with a customer, not a phone book customer as such.
Yeah. So Annie, thank you so much for your time today. And I look forward to having you again, but I want to talk about you on a humanist finance story soon. Okay.
I don't think I'm that interesting, but I'll give anything a crack.
Well, so everyone says that, but no, everyone's got a great story. But again, thank you.